Let's talk about flexibility. Flexibility is often one of the most overlooked portions of a program. I think a lot of this is due to some misinformation that people believe that flexibility equals a loss in power. This isn't entirely true. All it takes is one look at Dmitry Klokhov's warm-up to realize that a lot of the most powerful athletes in the world are also quite flexible. Olympic lifters, gymnasts, martial artists are all perfect examples of that. Flexibility also relates to aesthetics, size, and strength. For there has to be room in the fascial structures in order for the muscle to have room to grow. So, if you look at a lot of the most aesthetic bodybuilders of all time, they're also quite flexible. Flex Wheeler is a good example of this, who was named Flex not because of the act of flexing, but his flexibility due to his martial arts background. Kai Green is also praised for having some of the best legs in the business, and if you watch his posing routine, he is also quite flexible, especially when it comes to the hips. There are several other examples of this, but it simply relates to the fact that there has to be room to grow, and anytime you increase the muscle size, you also increase the strength. Hypertrophy does equal strength. Flexibility can also be used in order to create structural balance in certain areas. If a joint is slightly out of place, oftentimes stretching some of the tissues around it can help relocate it to the proper position. Now this takes us to how we increase our flexibility. Now there's several different methods. A few of them I'm going to touch on. I'm going to talk about static stretching, stretching through a range of motion, banded stretching, and weighted stretching. All have their strengths and weaknesses, and all can be used for different reasons. Static stretching is probably what comes to mind whenever you're thinking of flexibility training or stretching. It simply is getting in a stretched position and maintaining that for a certain period of time. It does have its benefits. It's quite safe to do, and it's very easy to judge how much of a stretch you have on the muscle, but it's often quite slow to yield results. But it is, however, a great tool in measuring progress. Simply, you can measure the distance that you were able to achieve one day, and several weeks down the line, compare that distance to see if there's been an improvement and to see if your program is working. Often, depending on the difficulty of the stretch, you need to achieve several minutes in a position to improve after you've gotten past a certain point. This takes us through stretching through a range of motion. A common practice that uses this would be yoga, for example. Now, this can be done several different ways, whether in a practice where you're measuring your repetitions by breathing, like yoga, or going through several repetitions of a specific movement, or doing a slow eccentric portion of a movement, right? But the key is with this that when your body contracts and relaxes, it actually yields a little bit more in the tissues every time than to just hang in the full stretch position. So this probably means that you're going to achieve faster results stretching through a range of motion than you would simply holding the fully stretched static position. This takes us to stretching or mobility training with the use of external resistance to either provide distraction, compression, or just a little bit of help with external resistance. For banded stretching, a good place to start is to look at Becoming a Supple Leopard by Dr. Kelly Starrett, or to look at his YouTube channel, Mobility WOD, as well. He has hundreds of videos there, an awesome point for more research and to dive deeper into the subject. He knows a lot more about it than I do, obviously. Now, bands are a great tool in order to provide a little extra resistance or a little creative banded distraction, which basically can pull your joint into a better position to enable the tissues to stretch more efficiently and to make sure that you're not mobilizing in a bad position. You can do this one through a range of motion or statically as well. And you can also involve weights in creative ways. Basically, you can use the bands to mobilize the position that you're trying to improve. So whether it's a squat that you can't hit, you can use the band on the hip to open up the hips a little bit and try to help you get into that position with the little extra resistance so that you can use it then to work on in the gym. So you can also use the bands to help emphasize the stretch in certain places. For an example, if you're stretching your hamstring and you normally feel it closer towards the bottom of the knee, as most people do, you can generally put the band on the hip, throw it up on a box, and it helps pull it down so you feel it a little bit more towards the insertion by the hip. So the great thing about banded stretching is you can quite easily improve the stretch or improve what you're getting out of the stretch by using a heavier band rather than trying to hit an extreme position after you've gotten better at the position and you no longer feel the stretch from what you were doing previously. So with banded stretching, you can quite easily measure your progress and progress it through using a heavier band. And it gives you a little bit more bang for your buck time-wise. So if you spend a couple minutes in a banded stretch, it is quite a bit better than just spending a couple minutes in a static position. And you can use a little creative banded distraction on the joint to put it in a better position to make sure you're mobilizing properly. Now we're going to look at weighted stretching. Weighted stretching is basically using a dumbbell, a barbell, or a weight plate to provide a little bit of extra resistance to hit a further stretch or to go through further range of motion. A good place to look is gymnasticsbody.com. The Foundation series or Mobility series has lots of information to dive a little deeper into, and there's lots of good stuff there. So you really just use the weight to improve your position, and you use only as much weight as you need to improve your position. This can be done actively or passively. You can go through a range of motion or just hit a full stretch position, and you can even kind of just gently pulse up and down in that position, trying to activate the muscle and then relax it, allowing it to stretch and lengthen a little bit further. Stretching with weights is probably the most bang for your buck time-wise. You'll get the most out of it and yield the best results in the quickest amount of time. That being said, it also is probably potentially the most dangerous. It isn't dangerous, but if you do not know your own limitations and do not use a conservative weight, there obviously is more danger when you hit a muscle in its fully stretched position with extra resistance than you were to use your body alone, basically. Now, all these methods have different strengths and weaknesses, and what really matters is what you enjoy doing and what helps you get to where you need to be. And that's different for everyone. So play around with some of these, do a little bit more research, combine methods and see when and where it works for you, whether it's in your warm-up, on your cool down, or as a separate session. Just make sure to try to improve your mobility, because mobility is the precursor to ability. I hope all this helped. Make sure to like the video if you like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. I'll be putting up more content, and just give it a thumbs up if you like it, and just comment below if you have any requests, questions, or anything. And my information is in the description, so if you want to send it a line, reach out to me, feel free, and my social media is there as well. Thank you guys for your time.